Good morning. How are we feeling today? Thanks for everybody who's here right now. And I'm sure that we will be joined by many more in a very short time. Welcome to day 3 of this conference. First of all, I would like to ask if anybody knows Rebecca de Leon Malay or Malloy. I have her phone. So I can't call her, but if anybody knows her, we have her phone. But, much more important, we start this morning with a very exciting session. After 2 days of discussions, it is now time to act, and that is also the title of the plenary session this morning. Half an hour of story sharing, how to act, how to make impact, and I'm very excited to introduce you to 2 of our civil society representatives who will start off with sharing their stories. We have Patricia Lerner. She is the Senior Political Advisor for Greenpeace and a political economist by training. She also brings along more than 25 years of experience as a development expert in the United States. And we have Mwangi Waituru from Kenya, who is with the Seed Institute, a community-based organization. He's also the co-chair of Beyond 2015 and with GCAP Kenya. So, without further ado, it's time to act. Over to you, and we're waiting excitingly to hear your stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, my colleagues and my comrades. As Bernadette said, my name is Charles Mwangi Waituru. I'm the co-chair of Beyond 2015 and the national coordinator of GCAP Kenya. The 2 organizations are doing the national dialogues and national consultations, and we are also participating in a project called Participate, whose main objective is to bring the voices from the margins, or to try and make sure that those who are marginalized, those who are voiceless, can have an opportunity to be heard in this discourse. And this has brought us into contact with some of the pressing or some of the real life situations of what people living in poverty go through. I remember just about 2 weeks ago, when I was having some of the sessions to try and give some voice to the voiceless, I came across some young girls, and they described themselves in about 5 sentences. One said, "We are young, we are not educated, we have no job, we are single mothers, and we've been thrown out by our husbands." So they were asking, what kind of a situation is this? So when we think about it's time to act, one thing that is coming out, or one thing that I can bring to this conference, is that the people we are talking about, either they have no choices at all to make. And that situation of poverty, sometimes from what the stories that we are getting on the field, is that it is characterized by very difficult trade-offs, and sometimes by impossible choices. Sometimes violence and insecurity will constrain how people make their decisions. And we have an example from our project Participate of a lady called Maria Teresa from Latin America and her family, who face the difficult choice, or the impossible, who have to make an impossible trade-off, because they have to choose between living safe and living in poverty. And Maria had this to say: "My son is 16 years old and could be working, but I'm afraid to let him go out. The stress is constant for fear that something will happen to our children, fear that they will be recruited into gangs. Because once they are in a gang, it is too late. They can't live even if they want to. As a mother, you are caught between duty and poverty. Because we need our children to help us in some way, but sometimes it is better to live with constraints than to wonder if they are coming back or not. Stress is constant, because of the constant danger we live in. So this is a situation of a mother who is faced by a very difficult situation, and that's why there's a uniform voice coming from the poor that we want something practical. We don't want theories. We don't want other frameworks. We want action. We want something that can help us escape from the vulnerability, from the stress, and from the difficult situation that we find ourselves in. Yeah.
Thank you, Mwangi. For thousands of years, the Arctic has been one of the few places on Earth to remain largely untouched by large-scale human exploitation. Today, that's no longer the case. Almost 4 million people live in the Arctic. They include indigenous peoples, more recent arrivals, city dwellers, hunters, herders, fishermen, people who depend on the land and sea for their daily food intake. Harvesting from the land and sea is part of the cultural stability of the region. The Arctic acts as the world's refrigerator, cooling the planet. But as temperatures rise faster in the Arctic than anywhere else on Earth, this giant mass at the top of the world is shrinking. And as we know, what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. A warming Arctic is already leading to extreme weather events having impacts around the world, such as sea level rise, which is being felt in the Seychelles, Pacific Islands, Caribbean islands, and other low-lying areas. For small island developing states, this is a matter of their existentiality. And these issues are already being debated in the UN Security Council, where there is serious discussion about what does it mean to have loss of statelessness and loss of sovereignty due to climate change impacts. A warming Arctic will have environmental and health impacts on the world, and the poor and vulnerable are likely to suffer the most. But that's only half of the story. What should serve as a serious warning is being seen by some as a business opportunity. And the Arctic is under threat from oil companies looking to drill in the dangerous and fragile waters of the Arctic Ocean, from industrial fishing and shipping, because the shrinking of the sea ice opens up opportunities for them to go in. In 30 years, we've lost as much as 75% of the volume of the sea ice. As the ice melts, companies are moving in to exploit the oil, precious metals, and fish, and are keen to use the northern routes to shorten their shipping journeys. That brings threats of oil spills, pollution, invasive species, overfishing, changing habitat damage. Right now, no one owns the international waters around the North Pole, but the prospect of new oil and fishing opportunities is leading to a carve-up by the Arctic nations. The Arctic is also witnessing a significant buildup of military forces as the region opens up to resource industries. And some studies suggest that while the pursuit of cooperation is the stated priority, when you look at how the Arctic states are rebuilding and modernizing their military capabilities, they're actually more geared towards combat capabilities, which may exceed the constabulary role that one might expect, particularly if you look at the new naval units, which are being built for high-intensity conflict. Right now, there's a feeling of collegiality, but there's a potential for conflict and undermining the stability in the region. We have launched a major campaign to push for action to save the Arctic by creating a global sanctuary in the uninhabited area around the North Pole. In effect, what we're talking about is creating an area of the globe under legal protection and off limits to polluters, which would be dedicated to science and research. We're also calling for a ban on oil drilling and unsustainable fishing. Now, is this a story about competition between environment and development? Well, it could be, and it will likely be portrayed as such by business interests. It certainly isn't about sustainable development if it's based on an outmoded model, but I would suggest this is a trap we should not allow ourselves to be sucked into. As civil society organizations and coalitions active in advocacy and campaigning on issues of social, economic, and gender justice, sustainability, and rights, we're all in this together. This is really a story about redefining rights, recognizing limits, and redefining goals. This will be an epic battle to demonstrate the human race can come together to avert disaster before it strikes and save the Arctic for the planet and for the people. We can create a new narrative about the future that we aspire to, one which takes the trillions of dollars being spent on dirty energy, the $1 trillion a year being wasted on fossil fuel subsidies and trillions of other dollars on other perverse subsidies, and instead spend that on a future that's worth having, a clean energy future, one where there are healthy cities, healthy communities, and make the break from an outmoded fossil fuel-based vision. This is a story which speaks to planetary boundaries, to governance, to climate change impacts on the poor, to the rights of indigenous peoples, to transparency, to gender issues related to the extractive industries, to health, to transport, to the potential for conflict. This is not about silos. This is about convergence of issues we all care about deeply. And the time to act is now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you for your very inspiring stories. I think we see immediately that when it comes to real life and real people, there are no different silos between development, environment, security, or rights. It all comes together in somebody's lives and their realities. What we would like to use the next 10 minutes for is to open up to the floor again and invite everybody else to share their stories or comment on what we heard so far. Let's keep in mind the topic of this session is time to act, so let's share actions. Let's share stories that worked. Let's share calls to action. Let's talk about real people's life. Let's get down to what actually makes a change in people's realities. I've got one hand so far. Okay, let's start here, please.
Good morning. My name is Helmi Salim. I'm from Palestine. In fact, I liked what Ms. Patricia Lerner said about using and abusing the environment. And this is not the only time or the first time that the big companies try to jump in and to damage the environment. And the question here is it a conflict between development and environment, or it is a matter of lacking awareness and concerns about environment? For example, if you take Alaska, a few years ago in the States, during the Mr. Bush period of time, he allowed the petroleum companies to get in where Alaska is one of the best natural resources areas or reserves areas, I would say, on Earth. But now I think you know much better than me, because I think from the States, they have been drilling now deep, looking for oil for many years now in Alaska. Now the Arctic, you mentioned a good point, who owns the Arctic? I think every one of us owns the Arctic, every one of us. And there are people called indigenous people who live there for thousands of years. That's what we have to concern about, not only the nature, but also the people who are living there and living on the natural resources, fishing and ice and maybe some other natural resources. So there is a matter of humanity here, and there is also a matter of environmental concerns that every one of us as environmentalists, as maybe policy-making people have to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's continue sharing. I believe Joanna wanted to continue.
Good morning. Thanks, Mwangi and Patricia. I'm Mwangi. I'm with ActionAid. Nice to meet you finally. I also agree there's no conflict, really, and that there is a huge convergence happening between human rights organizations, anti-poverty organizations, and environmental organizations. But I think it's helpful just to maybe name where some of the conflict has been just in the past couple of years. And I think one of the big areas of conflict is about timing, right? It's where is the sense of urgency? And so climate justice activists would say, put all that stuff aside. The planet is about to drown or explode if we don't deal with this in the next couple of years. And so the timing question has surfaced a lot of tension, and you'll have human rights and anti-poverty activists will say, but people are starving, dying, food crisis is now, this is just as equally an urgent question, and yes, they're interlinked, but you can't prioritize one thing being more urgent than the other. So that's, I think the question of the conversation around timing or prioritizing on a time scale, I think would be helpful to hear from both of you. But the other thing, the other conflict necessarily is about ideology or the structural causes of both dilemmas. And certainly in the development sector, you have a lot of actors who feel still that you can solve poverty through a charity model. A redistribution of resources to build more schools, build more, toilets, etc., and that will solve the problem. But it's not necessarily unpacking, the structural causes of inequality and injustice, which is based on a flawed economic model. The same tension that happens within the environment. And again, that's actually where the convergence is for us. Corporate accountability, what is the role of the private sector? What is the role of the economic model in creating a crisis?
Thanks. It was very good to really emphasize that this is about convergence as well, to bringing together the different dimensions of the different sides of this problem we are trying to tackle here. It reminds me always of this metaphor about how you describe an elephant when you have closed eyes, that if you touch it on one end, it feels like columns because you touch the legs. If you touch it on the other end, it feels like a hose pipe because you have the trunk in your hand. If you touch it at the back, it feels like a brush because you have the tail. But only if you open your eyes and see the whole thing, you know actually what you're facing. Before we hand back, just to manage time a little bit as well, there were some concrete questions, and I will certainly hand back to Patricia and Mwangi. Can I have a bit of a feel who else would like to share? How many hands are up? Last chance for... Right, I think we are all quite impressed by what we heard so far. And then I go straight back to Pat. And Mwangi, would you like to please comment on what you heard and on the questions?
Yes, I think I do agree with what my sister said. And in fact, there's a case of a young man, 21 years, from Machakos by the name of Samuel. And Samuel sees action on climate vagaries as one of the most important things that should be done in order to reduce the trade-offs that he has to go through. And because it's the effects of climate change that are causing him not to go to school, because he has to spend time out of school. You know, the trade-off, the difficult trade-off that he has to go through can only be solved by removing that aspect that makes him not access education, because he has to be out of education to fetch water and to look for alternative means of feeding the family. So it's very, very important that if Samuel is going to build a future for himself and for the family, for Samuel to spend time in education, not fighting for his mother. You know, the unfortunate thing, and this also came up in an experience I had in Senegal during one of our outings where we went to interact with the poor people, the poor children selling peanuts. And we were trying to put some of the participants, you know, reaching out to people in Dakar. And one of the girls we had gone out with said, our girls are fighting for their mothers. And I added, fighting for their mothers and their brothers and sisters. And she said, no, fighting for their mothers. And the thing here was, ordinarily, it's the mother who is supposed to be fighting for the children. But now it has gone loud, where you fight 12-year-old, 10-year-old out there in the streets fighting for their mothers. I met a similar case in Kenya, where I went to an estate just in the outskirts, about 20 minutes drive from the center of the city in Nairobi. And I got this huge group of young girls, all of them married, all of them carrying young children. And they said, we are employed as housewives, and our salary is accommodation and food. And even food sometimes is not a must, you have to hustle. And I asked them, why is it that everybody amongst you, you are so young, you are in 19, 20 years. Why is it that each one of you is carrying a small baby? And they said, this is our security. If we don't have the baby, we'll be kicked out of the houses. So these are the very, very difficult trade-offs that these girls have to go through. And these are girls who have come from rural areas. And they have come from rural areas because small-scale farming, thanks to the effect of climate change, can no longer support them. What my mother used on a small piece of land, she educated us, but it's no longer happening. You cannot educate 2 kids on what you used to educate 4 kids. So tackling the effects of climate change, tackling the effects of soil degradation, tackling the vagaries of our environment is very, very critical in reducing the trade-offs that the poor are going through. But time is also of essence. Because when you're talking about the post-2015 agenda, we've already had 15 years. How many years are we going to talk about? What will the next 15 years mean? Those people need action now. Because if action is not taken now, they have no tomorrow.
I think, I'm just reflecting on some of the comments that we've heard here. I think I take your point, Joanna, about the timing, but I'd like to think that it's more about how do we look at the multiple crises the world is facing today and the interlinkage. These are not operating in isolation. You have a financial crisis, you have a food crisis, you have a climate crisis. We've got linkages among all of those. And the strength that we have as civil society, as social movements, as coalitions, we represent the aspirations of billions of people. We're here at this conference to talk about this post-2015 paradigm shift that we're looking for. We actually represent an enormous strength. It won't necessarily be in lobbying in the halls of New York. It's in mobilizing people at the national, at the regional level, giving voice to those aspirations and saying, we can deal with all of these issues. We must deal with these issues because that's our future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I think that deserves an applause.
Thanks.
I think it's really good that at the beginning of this third day we are reminded about the people on the ground, and also to reminded that it's actually back to us to take action, that we are also agents of change here, and that we have a task and an obligation to do something about this. Now, after this inspirational start off in the morning, I will briefly tell you what happens for the rest of the day. We are now going back into the sessions of the Achieving Impact sessions part 2, but on top of that, we would also like to offer the opportunity that those who feel that they have already achieved enough impact yesterday, or that they would rather do something else, to provide space for other activities as well now before lunchtime. This is an open space for us to converge, to find commonalities and to work together. So whoever has the need to bring a group together on a different topic than the Achieving Impact sessions right now, please do so. In order to facilitate that for those who prefer to speak in the native language, if it's French or Spanish, we will keep the translators here in this room. So everybody who would like to join a conversation in French or Spanish, please stay here. The only restriction we have, we can unfortunately only have always one conversation at a time because the translators cannot split themselves in half. But that is another opportunity, that if people would like to stay here and express themselves more freely in their native language, provided it's French and Spanish, please do so as well. So these are all the options. What? Or English, yes. Sorry. So those are the options for now until lunchtime. Yes, please.
Hi, Bernadette. Just as a matter of process, if there are people who are interested in talking about other topics, could we ask for ideas in this room? And that way we'll then be able to congregate around.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to take you quickly through the rest of the day, and then we're going to go find other groupings, if that's okay. So you can have a little bit more time to think about whether you would like to call for an additional group. At 11:30, from 11:30 to 12:30, we are going to meet in the Rhine lobby to see what came out with all the statements and positions. There will be an option to sign on to statements if you would like to. There will be also the option to sign on to the statements after you left on the website. And we have an hour to see a bit of the fruits of our labor here. And I would like to invite the harvesting team to be also present in the Rhine lobby, so you can maybe explain a little bit about the positions, how they came in, or answer any questions that come up. And then in the afternoon, we have our closing plenary at 1:30 to 3:30, where we are going to hear the summary of these 3 exciting days together. So now, and I wanted to also say that we have still a mobile phone. If anybody knows Rebecca de Leon Malay, don't call her, because I have her phone. You know her? Okay, great. So now let's go to what we do next. Does anybody have already identified a side meeting or extra group they would call for? Where? Oh, sorry, please.
I would like to propose discussing the land variety genetic stock loss and the impact of that on indigenous women who live on subsistence agriculture.
Would you like to do it here using the translation facilitation, or?
I think possible? English is fine.
Okay, so can you maybe stand up? People can see you, because I just didn't see you. Or everybody interested in that topic? This gentleman here. Can you say that? Can you repeat?
Yes, it's the genetic stock loss. Every day we lose huge number of genetic stocks. And more specifically, I'm talking about food stock. That is impacting most negatively on the economic status and nutritional status of women and children in developing countries, more so on the indigenous population. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? You're pointing there, please. The gentleman sitting down with the beard. Yeah. No, you. So.
Yes, I'm not proposing a new issue, but there was a question yesterday in the group because the work was divided in different groups on mobilization and on the process from now until 2015. With what will we do in September? Then the networking and coalition building, the mobilization and ambitious campaigning. How do we get these things together? Is that the harvesting team, or is it a special session in the afternoon to get the elements together? Because there was a real demand yesterday to know what the other groups were doing.
So as far as I'm aware, the harvesting team is pulling them together. Ingo, do you have a comment on that?
Yes. This was exactly my proposal to combine the networking and coalition building session and the mobilization campaigning into one.
And which room are they going to find you in?
In the red area, room A, I would propose.
Okay, good. I think that at this moment we are good with extra side sessions, and we are supposed to go into the sessions soon. Michael?
I'd like to share one or two ideas to see what interest there is. Yesterday we heard a number of people saying that it's red card time and we need to send a clear message to Bali, okay, about what are the minimum, not what our aspirations for what must take place and what must take place if we're going to accept it. So there could be a possibility to put together a document like that, to work together in this room to do that. That's one idea. The other is we heard Amitabh mention the poison threads, and we heard that brought back up again in plenary. I would be interested in crafting an article about that, with people sharing their stories about land grabs, about privatization, about other poison threads. My background is I'm a writer as well, so if I have stories and statistics, we can craft something and publish it and still submit that to Bali. So those are two ideas. I can't do them both, but I'd be happy to do one if someone has to
So you
on
would
other.
like to congregate people around you on the poison threats. Is anybody here who would like to do the red card topic? I'm looking at Savio, for example. So,
sorry, last night during dinner, there were a couple of people who actually wanted to sort of mobilize people on that topic. So if people want to meet and discuss that.
So, red card, find Savio. Poison threats, find Michael. The topic on, yeah. Good. Let's leave it at that. Maybe more side topics come up later on. But I think it's time to go. One more? One more. Okay. Quickly, please.
I think it's I'd like to do it in how to say, the mobilizing workshop and other workshop together. But I think it's the time to write the or draft goals, set of goals, because with from our statements here, because what happened in the discussion with the negotiator in our country is that the negotiator and government usually say, yes, we totally agree with your comment, like human rights is important, but what is the sentence, what is the goal, should we? So I think it's a time for us to think about more clear sentences and indicate our targets, because after the UN working group or high-level panel have write the draft goals, it's too difficult to change the categories. So I think we had better to start writing working together beyond the thematic or beyond countries.
You mentioned you would like to do that as part of a session, or?
I think we had better to working now.
An extra, okay. So
No, not extra in that.
with the session,
With
with the
session.
mobilization session,
Yes.
I believe you mentioned. Yeah? Is that okay? Good. I am very conscious that we're actually eating into our working time, so the more work we create, we also need the time to do that then. So is that another topic? Yeah.
It's a clarification on process. So I'm asking, there's been a suggestion that we could have an open mic session because there are substantive elements that we want to speak about and that we can affirm into an open forum, you know, so that it's officially recorded. So is there the space for that right now? Is that now? And how will we make that happen?
Well, it's definitely, I mean, as I said, it's very open and flexible, and the open mic session is one of the opportunities. Maybe if we do it here, we also have the option of translation. I just have to say that I'm not available as a resource, so somebody else will have the honor to grab the mic. Would you like to take charge of organizing that? I know that's a big task. Is that okay? Brilliant, okay. So we have one open mic session happening here, and we have the other side sessions we mentioned earlier. Please congregate around those people.
Sorry, just in terms of process, and I know we need to get to the sessions, and there's also energy for open mic. I just wonder if we can't take 15 or 20 minutes now. We have until lunch. We have almost 3 hours. If you work through lunch, you have more than that. Can we take 15 minutes for an open mic if people want it, and then go to the breakouts, or not?
We also have the gallery session before lunch. Actually.
Right, but the gallery is walking and looking,
yeah,
right?
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to do so, but I have to hand over then to Amitabh. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so there's been a discussion, there's been input through the last 2 days, but there's been opinion circulating that perhaps there's a diversity of positions in the room that haven't had a chance to be aired, and that this is our last space together as a collective for us to put forward those ideas into the main room. Out of that can come both more substantive positions that get taken into Bali and the other spaces, but also it allows us, it's about process, so it's about allowing ourselves this time to bring anything into the room about this conference itself or about positions that we feel haven't been made clear. So can I just open it up to the room? If you can just indicate by a show of hands if you'd like to speak, and perhaps to make it easier, can you come down to microphones if you'd like to start, you know, speaking, and you haven't got a mic near you, because there's some at the back I know who don't have microphones near you. So can we start? Can I just get a show of hands? One here from Rosa. Anyone else? I'll just get 3 or 4 lined up. So Rosa, you, yes? Anybody else? 2 down the back. Yep, and maybe 1 more for the first, and then we'll just keep rolling. 1 more? Anyone else? Okay, let's start.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Koyan from Papua New Guinea. Just listening to all the sessions yesterday, I was a bit depressed and wanted to bring forward the Papua New Guinea experiences. Now we're going through a lot of land grabbing at the moment for extractive industries. And the deliberate cultivation of corruption, where companies are walking away and leaving local officials to carry the burden of corruption. The abuses in the mining and logging camps, yes, and on fishing boats and in factories. The environmental degradation, the erosion of cultures and livelihoods. Today, women, children, and young people are pushed into poverty. So I question the public-private partnership. How is that going to work for small island countries in the south? We are talking about do not demonize, or yesterday we heard from Homi Karas, do not demonize corporates. But I am sorry. What I'm seeing in Papua New Guinea is really, really demonizing. We are talking about poverty here, ending poverty. What is happening is pushing Papua New Guineans into poverty. Taking land from people and taking away the land that provides for them, taking away from them the environment that sustains them, and pushing women into prostitution, children into prostitution, and pushing away our young people from access to decent work. This forum has to seriously come up with something to make sure we take into consideration the people that we are. We exist for us. We do not exist for the companies. So whatever we do here, it has to be good for us, the people. Humanity has to be respect. The values of respect and justice and equality, we have to uphold those values. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And if I can ask you to be sure to add your name and organization. Did you say, Rosa, where you were from? Yeah.
I work. Okay. The group I work for is Bismarck Ramo Group, and we have spent the last 10 years working around campaigning and advocacy on extractive industries. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And number 2 speaker, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Nanette Antequesa from the Ecosystems Work for Essential Benefits, EcoWeb from the Philippines and part of the Beyond 2015. I would like just to share in connection to the word convergence that was picked up from the discussion a while ago by Bernadette. I really would like to share earlier, but then the time constraint, I really felt, I don't want to be like limited by time. But then at least I'm happy with this open time now. I'd like to share, yeah, I agree. At the higher level, we tend to separate issues according to themes. But then at the ground level, at the people's level, all of this actually converge. All of these issues actually converge. In our latest discourse and discussion with various community leaders representing their communities as a means of having a participatory analysis of the research in the participate. This is an activity that we hope we could hear really the voice of the people in relation to post-2015. We are happy that we had that opportunity, at least 13 communities represented in this research. Communities that are affected by mining, communities that are affected by disasters due to natural causes like flooding, typhoon, landslide, etc. Communities that are affected by armed conflict, communities that are affected by poverty because of several causes, and so on and so forth. These people converged. And in that participatory analysis, so they have laid out so many issues from their different communities. At the end of the session of the participatory process, we asked them, if you are given the chance that your voice will be heard at the United Nations level, by the government, by the international leaders, what would you like them to hear so that this situation of yours will change? Reality at the ground level, they don't know actually that United Nations exists. We try to explain to them, this is the, and they say, oh, and then what does United Nations has some, like, what matters that our lives? We try to also bring them to the realization what this MDG is all about. We ask them, have you heard about MDG? People say no. But when we tried to link MDG to the programs that they have concretely experienced, like to the program of the government, we have this cash conditional transfer. And then so they said, yeah, now we understand. And then we say, have you realized the impact of this international decisions in your life? With that concrete experience, then they said, oh yes. So maybe they asked, so maybe does it mean then that if we say something and it could be heard, then there could be change in the government programs, and then say, wait, maybe yes. Okay, so that now inspired the people, okay? So convergence, when we ask them, okay, after all those issues that you have raised, what are those that you say, that you could say, that really helped you a lot in sustaining your life, in overcoming those challenges? They said, well, the government has not done much to us. It's us, actually, people, who really helped ourselves. We were able to help because we formed cooperatives, and then we are helped by civil society organizations. We were capacitated. And they say, okay, if you are capacitated, then you think you can overcome? Yes, they said, yes, can be, but we need the government to change. So they say, it's not enough that we are capacitated, but the government programming, the government system has to change, laws has to be implemented, there should be role of law, so that our children will not be killed. One of the story in the participant is, okay, 11-year-old kid, a Boy Scout leader was killed, riding in a motorcycle with his father. His father is an IP leader, indigenous people leader, who was defending their ancestral domain land. They were ambushed. His father was ambushed. Fortunately, his father was not killed, but the son riding at his back was the one killed. That is because they had to defend their land from this mining corporation. So they said, okay, with that, what do you think is the most important thing that could defend your life, your rights? They said, until the government would not stand up to protect our rights, until the laws will not be implemented, we could not be secured. Our children's future will not be secured. It's not only our children's future, but also the future of our land. The future of our forest, the future of our forest will be transferred to the hands of the corporation, the land grabbers, and all those interested corporations and mining companies.
Thank you. I think we'll have to share the time. Thanks so much. Okay, and the next one, yep.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Kudakwashe Dube, and I come from the Secretariat of the African Decade of Persons with Disabilities. I just wanted to appeal and mention about the importance of mainstreaming disability in the work that we do as CSOs. I believe that if we start here with organizations that are here, in all your statements, in all your strategies, ensuring that disability is mainstreamed in the work that you do, then it becomes easier to convince the people that are developing the Beyond 2015 Development Framework to ensure that the needs of persons with disabilities are mainstreamed. We have about 1 billion persons with disabilities on the globe. There is no way that we can achieve the objectives of any development framework if such a huge population is excluded. So my appeal to the CSOs first and foremost, but also to the people that are actively involved in the development of the post-2015 framework, is to ensure that this important sector of our population, that it is included in everything that we do. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Mariama? Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's been really great listening to the feedbacks and comments. I think I want to speak to two issues. One is the issue of the importance of really looking at the structural impediment to policy implementation in the developing countries. I think Mr. Homey talked about the national, and he gave example of governments who have reduced poverty by themselves, but many of those governments really had independent policy-making processes. Brazil is not hampered by any investment agreement. It has not signed any investment agreement. It is not in a HIPIC, it's not a debt driven country. Many of the countries who have the most poor people are countries who the international policy-making environment constrains their ability. And we see more and more the process of the reluctance of the developed countries to change that policy arena, to develop a sovereign debt workout mechanism that would treat debtors equally and have a broad international framework for resolving that. And it's not just NGOs who are working on it. Governments, including Finland, UNCTAD, and Norway, have all put together and are trying to come up with a sovereign debt workout mechanism. And we need for the G20 and other governments to work on it. So that is something that the post-2015 agenda need to take into it. The other structural thing is the trade agenda. Since 2001, we've had a development agenda. The development has gone out of the trade agenda. The developed countries don't even want to deal with the question of food security, access to medicine in terms of intellectual property rights, and all of those various things. So these things impact any kind of goals that we would want to put together. So the policy arena, the structural agenda must be challenged. Lastly, I know time is short, so I will just flag a few things, but I ask you to look at it. There are NGOs and their governments who are looking at it and look at the trade agenda. Why it's stalled? It is stalled precisely because developing countries are not getting anything out of the agenda that is development friendly. So now we're in a Doha light. The development has dropped. It's not even the Doha development agenda, it's the Doha light. And we're talking about early harvesting of various kinds of things. But no, nothing for the LDCs. LDC actually have now the worse accession than any of the other countries who have acceded to the WTO. The TRIPS extension that offered generic medicine and allowed India and Brazil to be able to produce medicines cheap for HIVs, that's expiring. And now a lot of the Indian companies who were producing those drugs, they're also being bought out by the major pharmaceutical companies, and they also have problems about how they're going to do that. Now India is trying to address that, but these are fundamental questions that have to do with poverty, access to medicine. The last thing I want to flag was the point that Anita raised about the investor dispute settlement. Now the investor dispute settlement provisions allow corporations to sue government. That is now the highest growth sector among legal firms. Legal firms, almost all legal firms are having international arbitration division because corporations can sue governments for billions of dollars. In the case of El Salvador, the suit that's been brought against them outweighs the money they receive for ODA. Australia, a developed country, has been threatened because it implemented tobacco regulation and is sued, challenged by Philip Morris. And so Australia has said it will not have any more investor-state dispute settlement. And many countries are exiting, but the problem is exiting from the BITS agreement doesn't get you free because the agreement themselves the investor-state clause has a 10 to 20-year immunity for the corporations to continue to sue. So you could exit and lay low and hope nobody sues you. But the minute governments try to change environment, regulation, South Africa said it will not. It has reviewed all of its bits and said it will not sign anymore because it's impacting its black empowerment program. It's been threatened with suit by corporations when it changes labor and other kinds of regulations. So these things are real. And there are big campaigns being launched by NGOs, and many governments are taking action. I ask you to go on the web. There's a series of letters signed by 1,000 lawyers and jurists writing on the transatlantic partnership, telling the trade negotiator, please do not sign any more investor-state dispute settlement provision because it's destroying domestic law and impacting government's right to regulate. 50 US state legislators have also written to their trade negotiation, again, making an argument about how these investor-state provisions are distorting development and distorting the domestic legal system and distorting the ability of governments to regulate. So these are very, very real phenomena, and they're out there. We need to look at them, and they need to be part of this discussion. The post-2015 is not a post-2015 goal agenda. It's a post-2015 development agenda, which means it has to be different. And people have said a lot about the private sector, and I see you're nodding at me, so I'll leave it. But yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. I am Canan from Azerbaijan. My organization is a Public Finance Monitoring Center. My intervention will be relatively short, taking into account time constraint. I would like to go back again the issues on extractive industries, as my colleagues said, but not only from the companies' perspectives. we also should look at the government's behavior in these natural resource-rich countries with very lucrative extractive industries. Because yesterday, actually, we have heard very shocking statement that the government suffer lack of finance, but these natural resource-rich countries have enough finance, but unfortunately, they couldn't achieve the main social economic goals and development goals. These countries established more than 40 sovereign wealth funds and manage more than $4 trillion US. And it's a very huge and very big question why these countries actually failed to achieve these main development goals. And in this regard, we have to look at these natural resource-rich countries, extractive industries, which really deserve special attention in terms of institutional capacity. Thank you.
We have Sasha over there and you. I'm not sure how much time we've got left, so I'm just checking in with the organizers. How much time? You want to start the group sections in? Okay, so we've got two. Is there a couple more after that, and then we close it off? One more there, and a last one. We're about done. Okay, great. So 1, 2, and 3, and then we're closed. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly to follow up on this, I think if we can get some concrete proposals from what we just heard, that in Bali we should have at least a statement on this, that we need to be able to protect peoples from investors and the extractive industries. And so if we can get what we heard just from Mariama, and that there should be the possibility for developing countries to get legal support from the global community to get out of these investors' agreements, that might be something we want to take on. The other thing is we should stop, of course, with our international financial institutions and mechanisms which are contributing to this. I mean, we've just been signing on to the statements from the World Bank, which is financing the Corporation Dinal in Honduras, which is doing a big biofuels program and has been responsible for killing lots of local leaders. And so we're directly contributing with our tax money to the killing of local people protecting their land rights and their and who are being slaughtered by the corporation. So I think this is something we should be very aware of, and we would like to see discussed in Bali. And we have to find ways that that this is addressed. And we know this is something which is of course on our agenda as CSOs, but it should be on the agenda of Bali and of the post-2015 development agenda. And then the other thing is, I think we have to be very careful that the UN is not being used for propaganda also by countries which are complicit in the human rights abuse in their own countries. And it's, of course, difficult if you, on the one hand say, well, we have achieved, we have been very good on reducing poverty in our country. But then at the same time, that country is run by a dictator, and the figures which we're getting are really not what we can trust. So I think that's another thing we have to bring into this agenda: the accountability for the information we are using in the monitoring, and there we really need the CSO. So if we can get the support that all information which we're getting into these processes of monitoring a development agenda needs to be checked and needs to be based also on independent information from civil society. That would be an important issue, I think, to add to the agenda. And if we can bring these messages to Bali and say, well, if this is not being put on the table, then we as civil societies will not, be able to, we don't want to support this process anymore. That would be very useful, I think.
Good morning. I'm Noraida Ponce from Guatemala. Yesterday, we have a meeting as Latin American people who are here, and we say, hey, we are not poor countries. We are rich in many resources, and that's why many developed countries are looking at us. Then we said we are tired of research about poverty and extreme poverty. Why we don't talk about a new paradigm, talking about building indicators for extreme richness? If we want to eradicate poverty, then why we don't see why richness is growing and growing? The gap is bigger every day between poor and rich people. But we are always looking about poverty and extreme poverty. Then we know that people that are here are with a big commitment to change and transform the world, the inequities, but why we don't talk about extreme richness? We think that a new paradigm needs really a big transformation. So free trade agreements, association agreements are not just for helping poor people, are to make people poorest. So we talked as Latin American group yesterday and we said, hey, why don't we change and make us as Latin American countries be respect, but really respect by the rich people. So it's a call for all of us to change the paradigm. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Seyhan Aydınlıgil. I'm from Turkey, and I am a social policy and development expert and vice chairing the Children and Development Association based in Istanbul. I just want to say that yesterday I was very much interested in participating in a session which unfortunately became cancelled or was not held. And that session is Policy Coherence for Development. And since we missed that opportunity, I wanted to bring to the floor that development coherence is a very important issue that we need to still discuss. We have been discussing this for the past 40 years and still don't have a very, strong view on what we mean actually by development. And the images of that misunderstandings and different understandings of development also emerged during this conference over the past 3 days. Everyone refers to Homi Kores's speech, and I also feel that in several of the statements he made, he referred to development as a strongly economic something. You know, the social was not very much there, the people issues were not very much there. That there's this economic indicators that we use all the time to define development, and that the people and the social comes second, it's secondary to the economic issue. I think it's time, and perhaps we can bring a message to Bali from here, that the social and the economic need to be fully integrated in an effective way, and that has to be very clearly stated. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is that if you have had a chance to look at the Human Development Report 2013, which just came out, there are countries referred to as doing so well economically, and among them is my country, so that's, I mean, yes, if you use economic indicators alone, some countries are doing very well economically, but that economic well-being is not translated into the people well-being, and that I feel that UN is also not doing its part, and that this Standard and Poor's type of companies who are, evaluating countries on their development effectivity or effectiveness or performance are also contributing to this understanding that development is still very much an economic process and not a social one. Thank you.
So to close off this open mic session, a lot of us here have had the privilege of working with young women from around the economic south who've been working practically on the interlinkages between gender, economic, ecological, and erotic justice. And they would be probably quite angry with us if we didn't do what we've been doing in every meeting that we go to throughout the world in the last couple of years, and we're going to keep doing this. So we have a call, and we'd like if you could, we're civil society. We've been pushing the agenda for decades, and I feel like we need the energy and the motivation for ourselves to keep us going, because it's a very difficult process that we're in. It's a very large process. So can I ask you to join with us? Yes, what did I say? All right, so the call is, what do we want? Gender justice, when do we want it now? What do we want? Economic justice, when do we want it now? What do we want? Ecological justice, when do we want it now? What do we want? Erotic justice, when do we want it now? And then we'll also have it in Spanish. If someone can lead it in French as well, that would be brilliant, and any other language you want to try. So, are we ready? Show of hands if you're ready. All right, it's Friday, so we're going to get something started. What do we want? Gender justice. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Economic justice.
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Ecological justice. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Erotic justice. When do we want it?
Now.
Okay, once more, because there was no energy. What do we want? Gender justice. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Economic justice. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Ecological justice. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want? Erotic justice. And when do we want it?
Now.
And we do it in Spanish.
¿Qué queremos?
¿Qué queremos?
Justicia económica. ¿Cuándo queremos? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia ecológica. ¿Cuándo queremos? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia de género. ¿Cuándo queremos? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia erótica. ¿Cuándo queremos? Ahora. Muy bien.
The banners up.
Oh, we have no French. Anyone in French? Okay, come on, take it on. Gender, economic, ecological, and erotic justice.
It'll work.
Can you come up in the front here and pose here? Okay, come on.
Come in here.
Anyone who wants to join? It will work. What do we want? Gender justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Economic justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Ecological justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Erotic justice. When do we
C'est
want
bon.
it? Now.
Off. Vas-y, vas-y, monsieur Scott.
Ah, les femmes vont nous tuer, c'est pas vrai.
In French, in French.
Yes. Que voulons-nous? Ok, nice. Non, quand je dis que... quand je dis que
Vous répétez après.
You say...
Repeat after.
Économique, justice économique. Économique, voilà, justice... Maintenant... Voilà, nous, voilà. Ok. Donc, I will begin. Ok. Que voulons-nous? La justice économique.
Que voulons-nous?
Maintenant. Que voulons-nous? La justice climatique. Quand le voulons-nous? Maintenant. Que voulons-nous? La justice entre les gens. Quand le voulons-nous? Maintenant. Thank you very much.
Amos, hello.
Okay, thank you. This was absolutely fantastic. Just some housekeeping. We had talked of 3 additional groups. All those 3 additional groups would stay in this room because they all want to use the facility of translation, and we'll need to work out the time. So the red flag, the poison thread, and the indigenous people, yeah. sure. That's what I said. Yeah, I said all the 3 groups need to be here, and those 2 groups would be combined. Okay, great. And we need to get back by 1:30 after our lunch, but we need to also go to the galleries. Thank you. And we had also talked of the mobilization and networking group coming together. That's in room A. Thank you.